Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Kira.
I'm Max.
And this is In Case It Helps, the podcast where we have a little chat, share a little fact, and dole out some advice to your questions in case it helps.
Should we have some fun?
Let's have some fun.
Welcome back, everybody. It's
Hi.
week 3.
It's our third date.
That snuck up on us, didn't
Exciting.
it? Getting serious out here.
Are you hungry? Should we have some hors d'oeuvre questiones?
Let's do some hors d'oeuvre questiones. Kira,
Max.
what was the best thing you ate this week?
Best thing I ate this week was a meal that Max grilled by the pool. We had a little pool day with our friends, and he made this unbelievable coconut curry grilled chicken.
Yeah, some palm sugar, some quick shout out to Thai seasoning sauce.
Thai seasoning
If you're not on
sauce.
Thai seasoning sauce yet, guys, you're in for a treat. It's like all of the goodness of soy sauce, but with a smokiness and this like vegetal undertone. It's just like
Just
killer.
an umami bomb.
Yeah.
What was on the corn? It was so good.
Coconut milk and just some curry powder. A little bit of garam masala at the end. Grill it real slow so that you get a crust. Keep brushing it.
Just incredibly flavorful. And the most beautiful heirloom tomato salad. If you are what you eat, I am more tomato than girl. I love, love, love a good summer tomato.
Yeah, Mother Nature was bringing it this year, man.
Mother
The
Nature
toms were good.
Was on it. Really good toms with like spicy cashews.
Thai curry cashews.
Thai curry
just to keep
cashews.
the theme going.
Yeah, it was such a like perfect meal for a beautiful pool day. So thank you for cooking.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for eating and looking so beautiful while you did it.
What was the best thing you ate this week?
We had a double whammy night.
We did something kind of nuts.
A friend of ours is the expediter at a Thai restaurant in LA of a certain renown called Anajak. Anajak has been sort of like the darling of the LA food scene for a couple of years. And he sent a message saying, like, we're about to shut the kitchen for a couple of weeks to turn this tiny, tiny little kitchen that they're operating to in a slightly less tiny one, as all of the chefs deserve. And he's like, you've got to come in before we shut it down. So we had this date in the books, and we were going to meet Kira's parents there for a beautiful dinner. But the week passed, and Kira and I had both been incredibly busy, and we didn't have much time to connect as a couple before this dinner.
So I called Max before dinner and I was like, hey, I might just cancel this last meeting on my books today. Can we grab a drink and just like connect before we host my parents for dinner? Like, let's just spend a little time together.
And in the back of my head, a little bell went off. My favorite wine bar here in Studio City is called Vintage. I recommend it to you. It's lovely. The people in there are great. They're very knowledgeable, asking questions. They have a sister wine bar right next to Anajak called Buvette, and I'd never been. And so I was very excited to go. And so Kira and I met an hour earlier just down the street, and Ever the Iconoclast had cocktails at the wine bar. I had a Negroni that was delicious.
But then, as we're enjoying our cocktails, like a cartoon, a smell wafts and like grabs us by the nostril, and we're like, what is that heavenly smell?
We perused the menu to find the ham and jam.
The ham and jam, y'all.
Guys, the ham and jam rocked my world.
It is a
gooey and crispy cheese toastie filled to the brim with prosciutto and fig jam. If you know me, you know this is my idea of heaven.
Also, a toastie is what we Americans would call a grilled cheese.
Yes.
Although I don't think it can be called a grilled cheese if there's other stuff in it. I think a grilled cheese has to be just bread and cheese. Otherwise, it is a toastie.
Toasted sandwich.
Yeah, toasted sandwich. I like toastie for
Yeah.
anything that has stuff in it. But yeah, it was incredible. But we were on our way to this amazing dinner, and we knew we were going to eat a lot of amazing food, and we were like, we cannot order a sandwich right now. And then we ordered
the sandwich right now.
and
But we split it. It was an hors d'oeuvre.
It was a perfect little hors d'oeuvre.
It was so good.
Yeah.
And it perfectly set the tone of the night for a night of delicious food, because then we walked over to Anajak to bring us back to the original point of this story, and we were treated to just the most flavorful and
elevated, but still very like fulfilling.
Yeah, and very streetwise. It was fabulous.
Also, because we were guests of somebody who worked there, they did send out a few extra dishes, and we felt very taken care of. Basically, it was Thai week in the Kosarin Chester household.
Which is always a good week.
Always a good week.
Second question of the week. What was the best thing you watched this week?
Speaking of double whammies, the best thing I watched this week was a double feature of the movie musical Matilda and the 1996 Danny DeVito Matilda movie.
Mm-hmm.
The 1996 version was one of my childhood comfort movies. It was my sick day movie. Danny DeVito, Rhea Perlman, Mara Wilson, just beautiful movie. Miss Honey.
We live for Miss Honey.
We love Miss Honey. Just a fabulous movie. And we actually saw the musical for the first time a couple of years ago in the West End.
Mm-hmm,
We were in London for the holidays, and we were like, we should see a West End musical. Never seen Matilda, and we liked it, but it was kind of a rough showing. It was like that weird week between Christmas and New Year where nothing is real, and it was full of kids who were kind of rowdy, and I kind of missed a lot of the lyrics, and the lyricism is very witty. There's a lot of like punning and entendre.
Right,
and
it's Tim Minchin who's like whole thing.
Right. We missed some of the detail that makes it such a great show. So we liked it, but anyway, I got naughty stuck in my head. We can just be how we like, if enough of us is wrong, wrong is right. So I looked up the number from the movie musical, which I had seen when the movie came out and was being promoted, and it was so good. I like went and watched another scene, and then I was like, I'm gonna watch the movie musical. You guys, this is a little blasphemous. I'm not really a movie musical person. I grew up in a Broadway family. I think that like Broadway shows are a form of stagecraft, and that I would just always rather them release a pro shot than like turn it into a movie musical. But this movie musical of Matilda is so good. It like understands everything about what makes theater magical and everything that you can only do in film, and like elevates into this medium so beautifully. It's just so well done, and the girl who plays Matilda is so talented. The whole cast is absolutely amazing. It's just so good. It's just so
Is
good.
it Emma Thompson?
Yeah, Emma Thompson as Miss Trunchbull.
And Stephen Graham, right?
And
As the
Stephen
dad?
Graham, yes. And I had just watched Adolescence, and I was like, I can't believe that that's the same actor. He's the range on that man. He's amazing. So yeah, super, super fun and really interesting to just like study the differences of how these two adaptations were inspired by the same source material but took it in such different directions, which I guess maybe speaks to how beautiful Roald Dahl's
writing is.
I would now like to read the book. Also, shout out to Mara Wilson, who I've been lucky enough to become friendly with in the last couple of years. We met through a mutual friend doing some work in advocacy for child actors. They've got this great coalition trying to build basically safer sets for young people, and I got pulled into that by a mutual friend, and I got to meet Mara, and she's lovely. And I didn't make it clear that her Matilda was my childhood favorite movie, but she probably could tell. What's the best thing you watched this week?
The best thing I watched this week was research. I've been writing a historical comedy script this week, and to get myself flowing with the juices, I went and studied the best, and I rewatched Blackadder.
Ah, yeah.
Blackadder is a British multicam sitcom, historically set.
Which I didn't know y'all had. I thought you guys didn't have
Yeah, well, we
multicam
have them in
sitcom.
different types,
Yeah.
different font. This one is created by Richard Curtis, who we know and love as the creator of Notting Hill and Love Actually and Four Weddings and everything else that is the most beautiful thing of all time.
Yeah.
And he partnered with Ben Elton, a longtime creative partner who's like a little punkier and more politically charged. And they made this show, and I just got completely swept away in it. It's magnificent, and it's this perfect triumvirate of like witty and intelligent and completely stupid.
The perfect triumvirate.
The perfect triumvirate, if you ask me.
One of my
And-
favorite words that Max brought into my life. It's a very specific term that refers to three specific, I think, political offices in like Rome or something, but we've now just come to use it ironically to mean any
kind of triangle, right?
that are like important.
Anyways, the thing that struck me the most actually was the type of comedy that it is. I was watching it and I kept having these revelations of like, oh, that's why I'm like this.
Right.
Because it's like, there's a little bit of slapstick, sure, and the punchlines are pretty good, but it's so verbiage focused. These incredibly ornate insults and baroque turns of phrase and these sentences that leap and pirouette and bound and look like they're going to fall and then somehow stick the landing at the end. It's like the goofiest, most stupid poetry, but very intelligent.
Almost Shakespearean.
Yeah, and I was just amazed by how many people who are now titans of the comedy and film industry were packed into this sweet little show. So it's Richard Curtis, obviously, and Ben Elton, who I've talked about, and it was Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean.
And it was Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, who obviously cut their teeth here and then went on to be Fry and Laurie and Jeeves and Wooster and everything else brilliant.
Not shows that we're super familiar here, but incredible comedy there.
Yes.
We as Americans know Hugh Laurie as House, the gruff American medical drama. I didn't even know when I was young that he was British, nor that he's a blues musician.
It's maybe the best American accent.
It's unbelievable.
That I've ever seen a British actor do.
Incredible. I had a friend when I was in high school who guest starred on House, and she said that he stayed in the accent between takes, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, does everyone here know that House is a take on Sherlock Holmes? That's why his name is House, because it's like Holmes, and it's why his like main guy's name is Wilson. It's like Watson.
Huh, he's a medical Sherlock.
He's medical Sherlock. He's solving medical detective mysteries, which is funny because Hugh Laurie could have also totally played Sherlock.
Totally, he could have played Sherlock, yes.
He did, and Benedict Cumberbatch could have played House.
Benedict Cumberbatch could play Winnie the Pooh, and it would be perfect.
Honestly, I'd like to see that now.
Yeah, it would be great.
It's public domain.
Make it happen. Let's make it happen. My team, your team. Let's connect them. That was the best thing I watched this week, and I freaking loved it, and it made me very happy. Question 3.
Yeah.
What was the best word you learned this week?
The best word I learned this week was woolgather, which is a slangy term for daydreaming. And it's a reference to like old times in the Scottish plains where the sheep would walk around and get stuck in the bramble, and people would have to go out and kind of collect these bits of wool from the sticks where they had gotten caught, and they're sort of meandering around. And I guess the idea is like when you're daydreaming, your mind is sort of meandering from place to place, grabbing a thing from here and a thing from here.
How lovely.
Isn't that a lovely poetic
It's so cozy.
term? I know.
It reminds me of a similar one. Do you know about Fleece?
Like from sheeps?
Like from sheeps?
Like from schneeps?
When Fleece entered Old English, the primary meaning was just kind of like something that slips away, like the fluff of a sheep. But also, it wasn't just physical things. It could be metaphorical things too, like time could be a fleece. And so a couple of hundred years pass, and my brother and I discovered the new avatar. A couple of hundred years passed, and the sheep definition now means the wool of a sheep, because that slips away, and that's now a fleece. The time definition has also stuck, but the C has changed to a T, and it becomes fleet, which becomes fleeting. Time slips away.
Whoa!
And this all links very nicely back to wool gathering as a poetic intrigue where you are spending something fleeting, your time, to collect something fleeting, the sheep's wool. How about that for a little triumvirate?
That was
There you have it.
poetic.
Yeah,
You're a poet,
beautiful.
my love. What is the best word you learned this week?
Recrimination.
Ooh.
Recrimination is when you throw an accusation at someone who's just thrown one at you as sort of retaliation. It's like, you set my car on fire. Well, you stole my french fries. You know,
You stole
like
my
that's
french
the...
fry. You ate my french fries. Wait, what is that from?
Is it from something?
Oh, yes. I did a short form video on the rhythms of comedy, and I asked you for like a quick punchline, and you were like, you stole my french fries. Like that was like the punchline
Why
that you
is
gave.
that?
I don't know.
It
Go
must
watch.
have happened to me when I was 4, and now it's like crocheted into my basal ganglia. It just wants out. It's going to come in a script one day or something.
Crocheted in your basal ganglia.
Yeah.
Episode title?
Potentially. We'll find out.
Anyway.
I also discovered self-recrimination, which is when you turn that negative thought inward. It means being overly harsh or critical of oneself.
Don't do that.
Don't do that, kids. Question 4. $1 million idea of the week.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot this week, and the first things that come to mind are like high tech, right? Because in this godforsaken year, 2025, things just keep getting higher and higher and higher tech. And like most things have already been invented. Like it's kind of hard to come
There's
up
a lot
with
of stuff.
new things. You almost have to create a problem to solve it, it feels like. Watch a current episode of Shark Tank and you'll see what I mean. I don't think what the world needs right now is higher and higher tech. I think that there is a growing faction of people, ourselves included, who are actively and consciously trying to take steps to analog as many bits of life as possible and sort of reclaim our lives in the physical space. So with that in mind, my $1 million idea this week is an analog life kit. It is a box of tools and instructions aimed at young people who never got a chance to live a life without technology as integrated as it is. And none of the things in the box are groundbreaking, but they're all packaged nicely. So, you know, a map and maybe some literature on how we can rebuild the direction and tracking part of our brains that GPS has allowed us to sort of turn off. A beautiful little notebook for writing your grocery list instead of putting it in your phone. A dictionary so that you can look up words without having to go on your phone. A little charger box cabinet that has a plug for all of your devices where you can plug all your devices in and close the doors and have your technology out of sight, out of mind. What are other things that we could put in there?
I think a little clock, like a real clock.
Yes, a clock,
So you don't
a
have to
watch.
keep picking up your phone to look at the time or whatever. It may up the budget too much and damage the profit margins, but I do think there's a world where we could integrate music into this.
Oh, yes,
I think you could potentially serve a vinyl system
I'm
and
an
some
idiot.
records.
That was, in fact, the inception of this idea because we have been building out our record collection.
And it's been delightful.
A vinyl record collection, a little listening menu
You
so
can
that
see
you
what
can
they
see
are
what
and
they
you
all
can
are.
pick and choose.
And a record player. Or like a Walkman or a cassette player. Just like anything that's a little bit more physical and tactile and analog.
There's one really specific thing, quick tangent on the vinyl thing, that I've really enjoyed, which is that you're kind of forced to listen to the whole of something. And it just takes some of the ultra curation of our like playlisted lives back a step in a way that's really refreshing.
Not having instant gratification at your fingertips all the time is really good for your brain. And also it like really makes you acknowledge that it is a thing that somebody made. I think when it's easy to just click and skip, it's this ephemeral, esoteric, non-physical thing that you can't interact with, and it's hard to understand the value of that. When I'm holding a record in my hand and the cover art is beautiful and it's a photograph that someone took or a drawing someone made, and I pull the record out of the sleeve and it's like, this is a thing, this is an item.
Yeah, and you see the needle bounce in the grooves, like it's alive.
Yeah.
I love that
So
idea. I think
my
that's
idea
very
this week.
sweet.
Thank you. What's your $1 million idea?
It's a very sad day. Winter has arrived, and all you want to do is go and play in the snow. And so you reach on your tippy toes to the highest box on the highest shelf of your wardrobe, and you know there within are your favourite pair of gloves, or woolly socks, dare I say earmuffs. And you open the box, full of excitement and trembling fingers, only to find yourself torn asunder. One of them is gone.
Oh no.
And you can't just order another one because they're from Great-Grandma Hilda, and she got them on your 15th birthday from a travelling market in darkest Bolivia, so you can't just like Amazon one.
No.
And so all of a sudden you can't play in the snow with your favourite gloves, and this has happened to all of us.
Oh yeah.
And so you begin to cry, and you weep until you remember that last week you saw an ad for my new company, Mitten Match. Let me pitch you. You send us a photo of your lonely linens, and our team of dedicated tailors will create you a perfect mirror image one and send it right back. So you can enjoy Grandma Hilda's gloves from darkest Bolivia in the travelling market and go play in the snow, and all will be well.
It's a great idea.
Thank you. $1 million, please. Right in the hands. I'll
Mitten
take it.
Match and the analog life
And
kit.
the analog life
we
kit.
could actually, maybe we should
Is
pursue
there
this?
something in this?
If this podcast doesn't work out.
Kira,
Nice.
final question of the hors d'oeuvres before we dive into some viewer questions. What was the best fact that you learned this week?
I learned that peacocks are all male because peacock is the word for a male bird. The bird itself is peafowl, and the males are peacocks, just like with roosters, right? The males are peacocks, and the females are peahens. So a peacock is a male peafowl.
Well, you've just made me very dangerous because I now know 3 things about peacocks.
That's too many things to know about peacocks.
They're the national bird of India.
Oh.
I know that about peacocks. And their feathers aren't actually blue and green. I mean, it's a bit semantic. They look blue and green, so like they're blue and green. But they don't have pigment in them. They are made out of little prisms that bend the light.
Whoa.
You ever been to a museum and they have those paperweights that are made of crystal and they're like purple and red?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's the same reason the oil slicks look like that.
They look
and
rainbow.
Sometimes you see a little rainbow on the edge of a bubble.
Yeah.
It's called structural coloration, I think.
That's cool.
Them's my peacock facts.
I actually learned something cool about structural coloration recently. I saw a girl, she tempered chocolate and she laid a piece of plastic with exactly those sort of like grooves on top of it to make the sort of structure on the top of the chocolate that would refract light and look iridescent. And it was like
so
rainbow
cool.
chocolate with no pigment in it just because of the way it was refracting the light.
I love that.
What was the best fact you learned this week? You've just given us some great ones, but
Yeah,
I want
my
even
2
more.
peacock facts. I shouldn't have given them away for free. The best fact I learned this week was about Tuvalu.
Tuvalu?
Tuvalu.
Period. Who is that?
It's Megan, right?
It's Megan the Stallion on live
Shout out
stream.
Megan.
Shout
Love you
out
on Love
Megan
Island.
Stallion.
Nicely done. The fact I learned this week was not about Tuvalu the singer. It was about Tuvalu the little island.
Yes, Tuvalu the singer, we all call Tovlo. Turns out that her name is actually Tuvalu. It's like a pretty common name where she's from, but we call her Tovlo. Anyway, Tuvalu is also a country.
There's a bunch of cool stuff about this little island nation, but today's fact is that a significant quantity of their GDP comes from the fact that they own the .tv web domain. Like Twitch.tv, Pluto.tv, all of these companies are paying Tuvalu a ton of money
To host?
for the privilege of their delightful letters.
Wow.
A rare win for the small guy.
So anytime you see a website that ends in .tv, they're paying the country of Tuvalu to borrow that.
Exactly. There's some other cool ones too. Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean currently is sitting on a gold mine with .ai.
Oh, of course.
Micronesia has .fm for all of your radio wants and needs.
Wow.
I think Montenegro is .me, like for personal blogs and stuff. People love .me.
Great fun fact.
Thank you. Should we dive into some real viewer
We
questions?
should probably dive into some real viewer questions.
In case it
In
helps.
case it helps. This bit is very funny to me, and I fear maybe no one else.
That's all right. It's 2 seconds in the edit. They can hang on. They'll be fine.
Let's answer some questions, in case it helps.
Question 1 today is from Kayla.
Hi, Kayla.
Kayla writes to say, people talk a lot about good communication. But what does that actually mean? Which I think is a great question. What does it mean?
It's a great question. Good communication is, I think, off the top of my head, 3 parts, and there's little subsections each. So part 1 is expressing yourself clearly, and the first half of that is making sure that you're accurately portraying what you mean to be portraying. The second half of that is making sure you know who your audience is and meeting them where they are so that the person you're trying to communicate with hopefully hears what you're trying to express, right? So that's part 1. Part 2 is understanding where the other person is coming from. And that's also 2 parts. One is, I think, linguistically, literally understanding what they're trying to get across. And the other half is emotionally, empathetically trying to understand where they're coming from. And part 3, I think, is about the sort of emotional side of communication. I think that like communication at its best sort of requires you to learn how to step out of your initial emotional reactivity and zoom out and go, okay, how can we continue to communicate with each other regardless of just how we might be feeling in the moment? That, I guess, more relates to like more heated conversation and like arguments rather than just like day-to-day communication. But yeah, I think those are the bits of good communication.
Totally, yeah.
Just like minimizing the number of miscommunications and mitigating potential opportunities for things to get heated or for conflict to arise because you are both expressing yourself clearly and hearing each other truly.
Yeah.
Maybe?
No, absolutely. I totally agree. I think you're also right that like people talk a lot about good communication. And I think one of the things that is a result of that is that I think people overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
I think at its core, good communication is just communication that achieves its intended purpose cleanly, right? If the intended purpose is to like teach someone something, then good communication is doing that understandably and maybe succinctly and maybe cleanly. If your purpose is to tell a funny story, then maybe being succinct doesn't matter as much as like being rhythmic and being musical. And so because there are so many different use cases of good communication, I think it's a little unhelpful, maybe, prescriptive, to create a little set of rules that's like, this is good and this is bad. But I think what you will notice if you look at like consistently good communicators is that, as you say, there are a couple of things that are consistent across the board. One of the ones that strikes me is intentionality.
Right.
I think good communication knows why it exists. And the second thing that you totally touched on is audience awareness, I think is a tenet of good communication. Particularly right now, people are noticing and struggling to reach across social and political divides and have conversations, particularly heated ones. And I think the reason to me is a lack of audience awareness, right? When we try to make a point in a debate or an argument or whatever it's happening around the Thanksgiving table, I think the way that humans mostly do it by default is by repeating it in the way that we heard it because it resonated with us. Maybe I saw a great point on a TikTok and I'm like, that's brilliant. I'm going to use that next time I want to disarm someone. But the problem is, you're not telling it to you. You're telling it to someone else. And that other person doesn't have the foundational ecosystem of context that your understanding of the original point was predicated on. So, of course, it's only going to create further division.
When you're communicating across a propaganda divide, as many of us are these days, it gets even trickier because there are these hot button words that mean different things. So an understanding of the person you're communicating with's vocabulary, even, education level. And like I don't want that to come across as like moralistic or elitist or like condescending, but it's just the reality. Like if you're trying to make a clear point with an 8-year-old, you don't want to be using collegiate language, even if it is maybe more accurate. It's something that I want to make sure is very clear on this podcast because we talk all the time about how like language is a great tool and the more you can know, the better you can communicate. But like also you need to be able to simplify things.
Yeah, I think it boils down to an egolessness, right? I think that's essentially like good communication is an egoless venture in that I might have to sacrifice what I believe to be the perfect wording of something in order to make myself understood. And if the end goal of your communication is actually to be understood, then I think we need to spend a lot more time focusing on the person listening than we do on the way we speak. If I think I said something perfectly, but they didn't get it and it didn't resonate with them, was it good communication? I think maybe it's not, right? It didn't fulfill its ultimate purpose, which was to transmit my idea and be understood.
Yeah, I think all in all, good communication is just about seeing and being seen and hearing and being heard. It kind of harkens back to our code switching conversation. Like good communication with someone you're dating is very different than good communication with your boss, is very different than good communication with your peer at work. But I think broadly it is expressing yourself clearly, hearing the other person, and making sure that you and the other person are both having the same conversation. Like, I think a lot of times people will have a conversation that becomes an argument because the two people think they're having two different conversations, and just like pausing and getting on the same page.
Violently agreeing with each other with increasing heat.
I would love for us to do an episode where we play a miscommunication in an episode of Love Island and break down why we think it's happening.
Lord knows there's enough of them.
What we think they could have said to avoid the pitfalls of the discussion. I think it's a lot easier to point out what bad communication is than good communication. So maybe good communication is just communication without all of the pitfalls of bad communication.
I would love to talk about bad communication at some point, specifically in the context of teaching and giving information.
Yeah.
Because like if you've ever seen anyone try to explain the rules of a board game, like how bad people are at like passing information through file structures that are understandable. So we can definitely
People start with
get
the
onto that.
details and don't give the framework first.
And they give the exceptions to the rules at the same time as the rules, and they use all of the jargon before they have context to understand what the jargon means. Like, anyway, there's 2 more questions waiting. Should we go and tackle them?
Let's do it.
Beautiful. Question 2 today is from João.
João, like João Gilberto.
Like.
On one of our favorite Brazilian bossa
Gets
nova
Gilberto.
records. Gets
Classic.
Gilberto.
We love it. You should go listen to it. This question is, I feel my ability to think critically slipping away. How do I fix it?
First of all, as I find myself saying often on this pod, the fact that you're asking this question means that you are in better shape than you think you are. Most people are not even thinking about the fact that they're not thinking critically. So the fact that you are is great. You're aware of your own cognition, and that puts you on a head start. You're doing okay. But in terms of critical thinking specifically, I'm going to pass this over to you because I think you'll parse this better.
I have a couple of thoughts on this. Good news and bad news is the headline, and the good news and the bad news are actually the same news, which is that your brain... Great. Which is that your brain is very plastic. Not like a kid's toy, like a very malleable, very flexible, right? It adapts to the environment you put it in. The bad news is that the environment right now, predominantly, is a hyper-steroidal attention economy that wants to make you consume and rewards you for consuming, and thus your brain will consume. However, the good news is that if you want it to think more critically, all you have to do is put it in an environment where you think more critically, and it'll spring right back. How do you do that then becomes the question. I think there's a couple of ways you can do it. The first, and probably the easiest and most impactful, is to just take an inventory of your mental diet, the food you're feeding yourself. Because if we're all feeding ourselves algorithmic sludge all of the time, I don't think we can be that surprised when we start feeling a little bit like sludge.
Right, it's junk food. And some of the things that we get served algorithmically are great, but because it's passive consumption...
Right, and so I think one great way to do it is to try and introduce more nutritious sources of brain food into your consumption. So maybe it's an article, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a podcast, it can be digital, but just anything that forces you to chew on ideas rather than swallow them whole in 20-second bites.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that this connects really beautifully to this other concept that we talk about all the time of the idea of lengthening your attention span again and how that connects to dopamine and this world where things are very quick and very fleeting, to do an episode
very
called that.
Good.
We don't get many opportunities to let our brain focus on one thing. And so there is part of the critical thinking muscle that is just an attention muscle and just an ability to spend a few extra seconds on something. So anything that you can do, like you said, to extend that, be it reading a book or I traded in Twitter for Substack. Mm-hmm. And when I want to look at words on a device, I go and I read articles. They're not that much longer than reading a couple of tweets, right. But they do just help slow my brain down and give me actual ideas to think about rather than just memes. The other thing that you can do when it comes to critical thinking these days is just every time you see a headline, stop and do a few questions. 1, what knee-jerk reaction is this trying to get me to have? Is it trying to make me feel fear? Is it trying to make me feel hopelessness? Is it trying to make me feel inspired or envious? The second thing is to think beyond that, what do I think could maybe be going on here? What could be misleading about this maybe? There's not always going to be something misleading, but a lot of times there is, especially if it's a headline that's sort of medical or,
a little clickbaity.
Right. The third one is to think, who's paying for this, right? And this is something that I think can extend to the entire world around you. Every item that is in the room that you're in right now was designed by someone, manufactured at a plant, sent from one place to another. Somebody coordinated the transport for the vehicles. The material was maybe sourced from agricultural workers. If it's an organic material, I'm looking at wood and cotton, whatever in here. Every item is the result of contracts and business. So just starting to look at the world around you and think how did this get here? And maybe you need to do some research to figure that out, and that could be part of it. But yeah, so those are the initial questions to ask. Who could be profiting off of this? What is this trying to make me feel? What else might be going on under the hood? Also just having conversations about pop culture in your life with nuance beyond the first level of Twitter-inspired discourse. We do a lot of talking to our friends about pop culture things and discussing why is this the knee-jerk reaction the public is having? Is there any validity to the points that are being made on what I see as the other side? What are the points that I think I agree with? Is there something new I can add to this conversation? Like just getting your brain to like wake up, even on just like silly pop culture things. Not to self-promo myself too hard, but I'm guessing that this was a comment on one of my critical thinking videos. So I'm going to link my critical thinking videos. I'll throw them in a playlist so that you guys can go do them. I only did a few. And then got busy and we started working on this podcast. I do want to make some more.
Again. Yeah.
But go check them out. I give you some fake headlines inspired by real ones, and I give you a second to think about what might be misleading, and then we talk about it. I also have one on logical fallacies in there. They're fun little brain games, so go check those out.
Brilliant. Joe, I hope that helps.
I hope it, in case it helped.
Should we question 3?
I hope it helped. Let's do question 3.
Great. Question 3 today is from Rachel J. Rachel J writes to say, every time I date a nice guy, I get bored.
Oh.
Help.
Ooh.
Takes?
Yeah, this is a juicy one. Okay. Hi, Rachel. First, I want to break down what you might mean by nice guy. Because this is a term that's been used to mean a lot of different things, kind of co-opted in some ways that might not be what you're talking about. So if what you're saying is like, he's just fine, like he's a nice guy, like I'm bored, he's just a nice guy, then I think what you might mean is that he's boring. And I think it's very fair to be bored by someone who's boring or who doesn't have enough interests or passion or ambition or doesn't bring enough to the table of your relationship to make you feel like they're an additive presence in your life. Then there's the alternative. If you're saying that like you're only excited in a relationship if it feels a little dangerous, if they play games, if you're never quite sure where you stand, that might not be great. And it might mean that you want to take a look at your attachment style, which is the way that we relate to like the important relationships in our lives. And they're based on our relationships with our primary caregivers early in life. So probably your parents. There are certain attachment styles that might mean that you are seeking out relationships where you feel slightly unsteady or unsafe because maybe that's how you felt with the parent when you were young. Maybe you're trying to replicate that relationship and get a different outcome this time because it feels like it will heal something. There's a lot. I'm not a therapist.
Right.
I did study psychology and like I'm just pulling things out of the things I've studied because I think humans are interesting. So there is a chance that that's what's happening here. There is also a chance that you're just not at the phase in your life where you want a relationship that is steady and stable and you want the kind of chaos of like, you know, the chase, right? To some extent, I think that's kind of okay. Like, I think playing dating games while you're young, you learn a lot. That being said, I don't want to set up the false dichotomy that safe equals boring. If anything, I feel like you can have the most excitement and fun and sort of serendipity and surprise in the relationships that are the safest.
Yes. If your nervous system isn't having to go real threat, fake threat, actual breaking up, actual danger, maybe not, because you understand that fundamentally you're safe, you can lean so much more into the chaos and get that much more out from it.
It's why, like, you know, haunted houses are fun because that is that is the biggest spider I've ever seen.
You're so big.
Wow.
Where are you going?
Can I grab his thing and pick him up?
I guess so. You want to take him outside?
Oh, he's on the flow.
All right.
Spider on the flow. He can stay there.
New
That's
guest in the
fine.
podcast. Sorry. Anyway.
No, that's
Yes.
okay. So, yeah, it might just be that the nice guys that you've dated, the issue is not that they're nice, it's that they suck.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need to
It's very possible.
Maybe just find better nice guys, because they do exist.
I do my best. I will also say just very quickly on the nice guy red flag thing that I hope that nice guy is a term that you are ascribing to them and they are not ascribing to themselves. Because
Right.
I hope it goes without saying that people who are nice exhibit that through behavior and not through like a marketing arm. You shouldn't need to go and say that about yourself
Right.
to have
I'm
it
a
be
nice
understood.
guy. Why don't I? It's like
And also
kind of,
people use it to weaponize transactional behavior in relationships, right? Like, I was so nice to you, now you owe me intimacy. And if you don't give me that intimacy, it's because you're a bad person and you've taken advantage of my niceness.
Right.
That's
It's
a red
very
flag.
it's a very incel ideology, the sort of like,
It
I'm
is.
a nice guy. Why? But nice guys finish last, so I should be an asshole to get that guy I want. Like, no, true niceness, true kindness will get you far. You shouldn't be kind just because it will get you far, but like true kindness and goodness will get you to good places. It's the sort of false niceness that is transactional that probably won't get you the results you want. And I think that's why there are so many guys who are like, well, I tried being nice and it didn't work, so now I'm going to try the other strategy, which is intimidation or
Right.
you know, aggression or whatever else. My dad has not looked away from this spider. Is he crawling up my legs? He's a podcast listener.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of our stronger fans.
Yeah.
He made it. He found us.
The last thing I'm going to say on this is I hate the word nice. I don't think that the word nice is what we should use for this because I get a connotation of like politeness rather than like true kindness.
Goodness.
I picture normal SpongeBob.
Yeah.
That's what I picture when I hear nice.
Normal SpongeBob for anyone who hasn't seen this episode of SpongeBob.
Like, hi, I'm Bob. Like, it's just milquetoast.
Yeah.
What was our word last week?
Milquetoast is great.
Thank you. What was our word last week? Anodyne.
Anodyne, yes.
Like,
Anodyne.
how it's like not just a painkiller, it's like almost to the point of maybe sort of having no substance
Meaninglessness.
left.
Yeah,
That's
substanceless.
kind of how I feel about night.
That wasn't the point I was actually going to make. The last thing I want to say before we wrap up, in case it helps episode 3, is that, like, if you are just someone who likes the adrenaline rush of chaos, maybe consider that you don't have to find that in your relationship.
Yeah, maybe go
you should have
skydiving.
maybe you should have an extreme sport hobby. Like, you can find these things in different parts of your life so that your relationship can be free of that desire for adrenaline, and then you can just get it earnestly and interact without having to, like, force it to be something it's not.
We would never ask one friend to be everything we need in our life, but a lot of us, I think, do end up doing that from a partner. We want them to cure everything that ails us and bring all of the different things that we need to our life. And one person ultimately cannot be everything to you, unless they're Max Chester, because you do a pretty good job.
I do my best.
But if there are things that you need in your life, maybe, if you can find them in other places that might help.
I think that's it for our viewer questions this week.
I'm full. What a delicious entree.
What a delicious meal. Thank you for writing to us, as always.
Yes.
Please, if you want us to tackle your questions next week, put them in the little commentarios.
Drop them in the comments, hit that
Drop them in
subscribe
the
button, hit
comments,
that bell.
smash that
Don't forget to
like.
subscribe, smash that like button. I'm so sorry. And if you're new, welcome to my YouTube channel. There's a lot of stuff for you to explore, so have fun.
And we'll see you next week for another episode of In Case It Helps.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Did you hate that? Was that bad?
What a peculiar thing that you've chosen to do. All right, we'll see you next time. I'm going to go and recover from that with a cold bath for a week, and then we'll see you next time. I'm a fragile boy.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.